Are you a forest professional dealing with a visually sensitive area? Hi, I'm Garnet Murrow, and a catalyst for me in this conversation, in this context, is a recent discipline case with the ABCFP, the Association of BC Forest Professionals. The case was dismissed in August 2016. However, it gave us a lot of value and a great opportunity for a good conversation. So let's jump into it. All right, so let's talk about this. I've just come off the phone with Brian Fraser. Now, I took a few notes here, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about or share, and I asked Brian for his permission. He said yes. There's quite a few things, and these things are never as simple as what we think they are. And ultimately, what from Brian's perspective, what a lot of this came down to was this transitional period between the Forest Practices Code and FERPA. At the time, he was working for Teal Jones on the coast. There was a complaint. The complaint was lodged against him by Haida about 3 years after any of the work that he had done. So he wasn't working there anymore. He'd moved on. A lot of different variables. So again, these things are never as simple as what we first see or what was actually sort of written up in the ABCFP Discipline Case Digest. This is really just a synopsis of what happened. So anyway, my conversation with Brian was very enlightening, and I really appreciate his willingness to share with us so that we can all learn from his experience. Ultimately, what he felt, and I'm just looking at my notes here, there was no real mechanism, to bring the FREP protocol, into the world. He's coming from an environment of forest practices code where the visual impact assessment guidebook, we talked about that already. The visual impact assessment guidebook is there simply as a guideline. It's not legislated, so it's non-statutory. And this sort of ambiguity between forest practices code transitioning over to FERPA, and what does it mean? This is where Brian felt that he was caught in the bite on things, and that ultimately two reasonable professionals could come to different conclusions on sort of how things can be managed, and he felt like that was truly what it came down to. Ultimately, what he also felt was that the ministry, as in the FLNRO and the Forest Practices Board and the ABCFP, if anything, are really starting to communicate much better, and that ultimately these three bodies are starting to clear some of the muddy waters, if you will, around a lot of the ambiguity that exists around the visual resource management. I'm talking to Brian, and right away he brings up the recent article, which we've talked about as well in this training, regarding the Forest Appeals Commission, and the legal sort of article written by Jeff here, the lawyer, about the rule of law. And that as practitioners, we need to know what the goalposts are so that we can measure it against them. So his closing comments to me were that if anything, the percent alteration and whatnot should probably come into district policy at a district level, such that practitioners know where they can and cannot go. So I think there's a lot of value in meeting with their local district people and, having these kinds of conversations. What does it mean to be very easy to see in your area, basically, because ultimately it's different everywhere you go. So anyway, there's some of Brian's insights, and I thought it'd be really good and important to share with you what he felt from his experience going through this discipline case. Okay, it only seems fair that there needs to be another conversation, and that's with the ABCFP directly. So I picked up my phone and I had a good conversation with Casey McCauley. So he's the registrar with the ABCFP, and he was willing to share some of his insights. Now, again, the catalyst for this agenda item on our training is simply there was a discipline case. And I think, what was really important it's important for me, and it was important from Casey's perspective, is that, the focus is not this case, but how we behave as professionals with regards to visual resource management. Now, Casey did direct me to the discipline case summary, And, you really just pointed out what the key points are there. Now, Casey and I, we go back a little ways. We've known each other for a while, and we both live in Kamloops. So I think it's fair game that I can show a good picture of him and see he actually goes in the field, and he doesn't always wear his glasses. So thanks, Casey, for being in sport here. But really, when it comes down to, all kidding aside, the summary of this particular case, it really is about professional conduct, the members' opportunity to share, what happened from their perspective. In which case, the subject member in this case was able to share what his concerns were. And then ultimately, what are your ethical duties? And we'll talk more about that in a moment. And also, what's unique in this case is that it is a third-party driven complaint. So in this case, the president of the ABCFP brings it forward. So those are attached in the summary of the discipline case. And at the end of the video here, or below the video, I will have a link to the discipline case, and I'm going to ask that everybody download it so that you can read it, and then we can have a conversation in the training about it. So a little bit furthermore on this, the code of ethics is really what a lot of this is grounded on, and it really drives all of our practices. Now, this is the code of ethics that I have from the early 90s when I became a registered professional forester. So, it's from the early 90s. However, principally, it hasn't changed since then. We have a duty through bylaw 11.2 to the public, to the profession, to our client or employer, and to our other members. So these are our driving principles. Our code of ethics here, and ultimately that's really what all of this is about. End of the day, we're looking for that balance. The social, economic, and environmental. The sweet spot where we want to practice is somewhere in the middle. If we can achieve that, that's fantastic. And that's not easy. Not easy with any of the aspects that we do. However, it is possible, and that's what I would always encourage people to do: is strive for the middle there. Find that balance. All right. So, is this important? Is it really going to affect us? Why are we having this conversation? Well, I really feel it's very important because ultimately it's a privilege to practice, and it's our right, in British Columbia, to practice professional forestry or forest professionals, and so ultimately, it's a duty that we're bound to the code of ethics that drives us, and ultimately it's a public resource value, and we need to maintain the public's confidence in our profession. And that goes right down to, it doesn't matter who you're working for, conduct yourself professionally. Now, is this relevant and germane to what we do? Absolutely. So here, September 2016, what concerns me here is not just the title, Professional Reliance Experiment or Regulatory Failure, but when tours operators are feeling like they have to be the watchdog of forestry practices. Very concerning to me. At the end of the day, this is ours and our responsibility. So we need to maintain that credibility. And if you don't think it's, is this just a coastal thing? Well, no. I mean, it happens in the interior here, in the Kamloops area, timber tussles in the woods near Chase. Residents of a rural area near Chase are clashing with forestry companies. A fight foresters predict will become more common as companies log timber closer to homes. Again, this is a very real issue for us, and one that I look forward to discussing in further detail at the session. So what I'd like you to do is download the discipline case, download the code of ethics if you haven't had a look at it, or refresh yourself with the code of ethics, and I'll see you in the classroom.